In 2014, a healthcare startup reached a valuation of $9 billion. It had board members from the highest levels of government and hundreds of millions in venture capital. But there was one problem: they didn't actually have a working product. To understand how that happened, you have to look at the process they were trying to replace. Traditional blood testing is tedious. It requires drawing vials of blood with large needles, sending them to off-site labs, and running them through a cluttered manual gauntlet of slides and pipettes. The medical industry is notoriously slow to evolve. Patients hate the needles, doctors hate the wait times, and investors saw a massive, antiquated system practically begging for a Silicon Valley-style disruption. That desperation created a collective blind spot. People wanted a sleek, modern solution so badly that they became willing to accept the promise of a miracle before anyone had actually proven it existed. That promise was delivered by Elizabeth Holmes. She dropped out of Stanford at 19, presenting herself as the intense, laser-focused genius who would replace massive, centralized hospital labs with a device small enough to sit on a desk. Her company, Theranos, made a very specific, very bold claim. They said they could run over 200 clinical tests, everything from cholesterol to cancer markers, using just a single drop of blood from a simple finger prick. Holmes didn't pitch this to medical experts. She pitched it to tech investors. She wore black turtlenecks, spoke in deep, measured tones, and framed her blood testing machine less like a medical device and more like a sleek new smartphone. The aesthetic worked perfectly. The media and venture capitalists immediately mapped her onto the archetype they understood best. They started calling her the next Steve Jobs. By wrapping a medical diagnostic tool in the familiar packaging of consumer tech, Holmes bypassed the rigorous peer review process of clinical science. Investors assumed the tech was sound because she looked and sounded like the founders who had already made them rich. Down in Silicon Valley, hype often functions as its own currency. If enough smart people say something works, others assume the due diligence has already been done. This created a powerful herd mentality. High-profile figures like Larry Ellison and Rupert Murdoch wrote massive checks. Every new investment signaled to the rest of the market that Theranos was a sure thing, even though outside scientists had never actually verified the data. This chart shows the hyper-aggressive growth curve Theranos experienced during this period. The valuation spiked rapidly, terminating at a massive $9 billion. That peak crowned Holmes as the youngest self-made female billionaire in the world. But inside their modern, glass-walled headquarters, the company operated under extreme secrecy. Employees were siloed, non-disclosure agreements were weaponized, and the internal operations were completely opaque to the outside world. On stage, Holmes played the role of the visionary leader flawlessly, appearing on magazine covers and giving keynote speeches about changing the world. That $9 billion valuation functioned as a psychological shield. The market collectively decided the technology had to be real, simply because the company was too valuable for it to be a lie. The reality was that the proprietary Edison machine was broken. The miracle technology they were selling simply did not exist. While the marketing department promised a fully automated, single-drop testing process, laboratory employees were secretly taking those tiny blood samples, diluting them, and running them through commercial machines bought from competitors. When the Edison machines did run tests, the failure rates were astronomical. Management actively concealed these errors from pharmaceutical partners and federal regulators, hiding the data behind claims of trade secrets. To keep the illusion alive, actual test results were manipulated. When the machines produced wildly inaccurate numbers, the reports were simply altered to look normal, manufacturing the appearance of scientific progress. Theranos was operating entirely on fabricated momentum. They had built a highly efficient engine for manufacturing trust, precisely to cover up the fact that the actual product was an empty box. As the company expanded, the risk shifted from investor bank accounts to actual patient lives. Theranos had partnered with pharmacies to roll out these tests to the general public, inserting an unproven technology into the chain of medical care. If a new social media app crashes, users get an error screen. If a diagnostic healthcare system fails, a doctor makes a medical decision based on a lie. Real patients were handed these fabricated results. Some received false positives, sending them into panic over life-threatening conditions they didn't have. Others received false negatives, delaying crucial treatments for very real illnesses. This is the consequence of a culture that rewards a compelling pitch more than laboratory data. When a visionary narrative is allowed to bypass strict scientific verification, ethical accountability is the first thing to fail. Eventually, whistleblowers spoke up, and investigative journalists obtained the real data. The facade crumbled rapidly, exposing the medical failures, zeroing out the $9 billion valuation, and ending in federal fraud convictions. A perfectly crafted story can absolutely build an empire and attract billions of dollars. But when you cross the line into human health, gravity always takes hold, and the verifiable truth is the only metric that survives.